The massive ship hung in Earth's orbit like a dark cloud. It was 3 miles long and shaped like a spear. The arrival of the Draxian Empire's flagship had brought the world to a standstill. Every television, computer, and phone showed the same image: humanity's first contact with alien life. Alan Wright stood by the window of the International Space Agency's main conference room. He rubbed his stubbled chin and tried to calm his nerves. At 45, the former Marine had faced many challenges, from combat zones to high-stakes negotiations. But nothing had prepared him for this. "Ambassador Wright," a voice called from behind him. "They're ready for you." Alan turned to see Olivia Martinez, his assistant, standing in the doorway. Her usual confident smile was replaced with a worried, "Look, how do I look?" Alan asked, straightening his blue uniform jacket. "Like someone who's about to meet aliens for the first time," Olivia said. The corner of Alan's mouth lifted slightly. "That obvious, huh?" "The transport ship is waiting. The world leaders have agreed. You're our spokesman." Alan nodded. The choice made sense. He had both military training and diplomatic experience. He was also known for keeping calm under pressure. Right now, that skill was being tested to its limit. The shuttle journey to the Draxian ship took 30 minutes. Alan spent it reviewing what little they knew about the reptilian species. The Draxians had sent messages ahead of their arrival, explaining they represented something called the Galactic Council. They claimed to rule over 200 alien species. Their messages were polite, but carried an unmistakable tone of superiority. The shuttle docked with a soft thud. Alan took a deep breath as the doors hissed open. 4 Draxians waited on the other side. They stood 7 feet tall on powerful hind legs. Their scales shimmered with green and gold colors. They wore ornate armor that seemed more decorative than practical. Their faces reminded Alan of Earth's monitor lizards, but with intelligence burning in their yellow eyes. "Welcome, human representative," said the tallest Draxian. His voice had an odd, clicking quality. "I am Lord Zexkrill, 4th Commander of the Empire and Chief Ambassador to developing species." Alan caught the slip but kept his face neutral. "On behalf of Earth, I thank you for this historic meeting. I am Ambassador Alan Wright." The Draxian blinked slowly. "Follow me. The Grand Admiral wishes to speak with you before you are shown to your quarters." Alan walked behind the towering aliens. The ship's corridors were tall and wide, designed for beings larger than humans. The air smelled faintly of cinnamon and something like wet leaves. Other aliens moved through the passages. Some nodded respectfully to the Draxians while others quickly moved aside. They entered a vast chamber. At its center sat an enormous Draxian, on what could only be described as a throne. His scales were deep crimson and gold bands circled his thick arms. "Grand Admiral Vex Mora," announced Lord Zexkrill. "I present the human representative, Alan Wright." The Grand Admiral looked down at Alan. "So small," he said. "Yet we have observed your transmissions. You fight many wars among yourselves. Curious behavior for a species so fragile." Alan kept his diplomatic smile in place. "We have our conflicts, yes, but we also create art, music, and literature. We explore and learn. We are more than our disagreements." "Indeed," said the Grand Admiral, though he sounded unconvinced. "We have brought you a great honor, human. Earth has been granted observer status in the Galactic Council." "Observer status?" Alan asked. Lord Zexkrill made a gesture that might have been a smile, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Yes, you will be allowed to attend council meetings. In time, perhaps centuries from now, if your species proves itself, you might earn voting rights." Alan kept his expression neutral, but inside he felt a spark of indignation. "That is generous. What would this observer status entail?" "You will be given a seat in the Great Chamber," explained Lord Zexkrill. "From there you may watch the proceedings and learn from more advanced civilizations. Speaking privileges are limited, of course." "Of course," echoed Alan. "May I see this seat?" The Grand Admiral waved a clawed hand. "Lord Zexkrill will show you. The first council meeting is tomorrow. Many species are curious about Earth. Try not to embarrass yourselves." Alan was led through more corridors until they reached enormous, double doors carved with symbols from hundreds of alien languages. Inside was the council chamber, a vast amphitheater with thousands of seats arranged in concentric circles. The largest and most ornate seats were at the center. The Draxian delegation sits here at the heart of the council, Lord Zex Krill explained proudly. The Quanitarians, Plex, and other founding species occupy the next rings. Newer and less significant members sit further out. They walked past dozens of rows. The seats became progressively smaller and simpler. Finally, near the back wall, Lord Zexacrill stopped. "Here," he said, pointing to what looked like a small stool. It sat so far from the central speaking area that Alan doubted anyone seated there could even be seen, let alone heard. "This is humanity's place in the council?" Alan asked quietly. "Yes. You should be grateful. Some species wait millennia for any seat at all." Alan studied the tiny stool, then looked around the chamber. He noticed something interesting. Each species had seats designed for their specific body types. The Draxians had large, throne-like chairs. Some smaller aliens had perches. Others had what appeared to be water tanks. "The seating seems very accommodating to different physiologies," Alan observed. "The council charter requires appropriate accommodation for all recognized species, Lord," Zexkrill said dismissively. "Now you will be escorted back to your shuttle. Return tomorrow with your formal acceptance of our generous offer." Back on Earth, Alan sat with the Global Leadership Committee. Faces on screens from around the world looked worried as he explained the situation. "They're treating us like children," said the European Union president. "This observer status is insulting." "But can we afford to refuse?" asked another leader. "They clearly have technology centuries beyond ours." Alan spread his hands on the table. "There's something else. While I was there, I requested copies of the Galactic Charter. Olivia has been studying it." Olivia stepped forward. "Article 47.3b states, all sentient species shall be afforded representation proportional to their physical requirements. The Draxians are using this to justify our tiny seat and limited role." "So what can we do?" someone asked. Alan smiled for the first time since returning. "I think I found a loophole. The charter is very specific about seating requirements. If we can't have a better position, we might be able to bring our own seat. One that makes a statement." "What kind of statement?" asked the U.S. president. "The kind that says humanity won't be overlooked," Alan replied. "Olivia, call Susan Kelly at NASA. We need an engineer with creative ideas, and we only have 24 hours." Susan Kelly rubbed her tired eyes as she looked at the holographic display. The NASA engineer had been working all night with her team. Their workshop at the International Space Agency was filled with tools, parts, and empty coffee cups. "Can you explain it one more time?" Alan asked. He had stayed with them through the night, watching as their creation took shape. Susan pointed to the chair they had built. It looked simple enough, a sturdy seat with polished wooden armrests. From the outside, it looks like a normal Earth chair. Nothing fancy or threatening. She pressed a button on her tablet. The chair transformed. Its legs extended upward smoothly. The seat rotated and tilted. Hidden panels opened to reveal small speakers and microphones. "But with one touch," Susan continued, "it becomes our answer to the Draxians' insult." Alan walked around the chair, nodding with approval. "And the material? A carbon titanium alloy we developed for the Mars missions. Looks like wood, but stronger. Then steel. They won't be able to damage it easily." Olivia burst into the workshop, waving her tablet. "I've been studying more of the charter. Article 89.7 specifically states that representatives may bring personal comfort devices to council. Meetings without prior approval." Alan grinned. "A chair is definitely a comfort device." "There's more," Olivia said. "I've been communicating with a legal expert from a species called the Quanitarians. One of their elders, named Momu, reached out after hearing about Earth joining the council. The Quanitarians were founding members, but the Draxians have pushed them aside over the centuries. And?" Alan prompted. "Momu confirmed our interpretation is correct. No one has challenged the Draxians on seating rights in thousands of years. Most species just accept what they're given." Susan patted the chair. "Well, Humans aren't most species. 6 hours later, Alan and Olivia prepared to return to the Draxian ship. The special chair was loaded onto their shuttle, covered with a simple tarp. Earth's leaders had approved their plan, though many were nervous about antagonizing the powerful aliens. As they approached the massive Draxian vessel, Olivia looked out the window. "Do you think this will work?" Alan adjusted his uniform collar. "Either way, we won't be ignored." Lord Zexacrill was waiting when they docked. His eyes narrowed at the covered object being carried by 2 human crew members. "What is this?" he demanded. Alan smiled pleasantly. "A personal comfort device as permitted by Article 89.7 of the Galactic Charter." The Draxian's tail twitched. "You have studied our laws." "We're fast learners," Alan replied. The council chamber was filling with representatives from across the galaxy. Aliens of all shapes, sizes, and colors moved toward their assigned seats. Some floated, others crawled, and a few seemed to shimmer like they weren't fully solid. Alan noticed how the most impressive species sat near the center, while the strange or smaller ones were pushed to the edges. The hierarchy was clear, and humans were at the bottom. Lord Zexacrill led them to the tiny stool at the back of the chamber. "Your place," he said with what sounded like satisfaction. "The session begins in 20 minutes. As soon as the Draxian left, Alan nodded to his team. They removed the tarp from their chair and placed it beside the stool. Several nearby alien representatives watched with curiosity. "What is that device?" asked a small blue being with 4 eyes. "It's our chair," Olivia explained. "For our comfort." The alien looked surprised. "You brought your own seating, no one does that." "Humans like to be comfortable," Alan said simply. Word spread quickly through the chamber. By the time the session was about to begin, many representatives were stealing glances toward the back where the humans had set up their chair. Some whispered to each other. Others seemed amused. Lord Zexacrill stormed toward them, followed by 2 Draxian guards. "What is the meaning of this? Remove that object at once." Alan stood his ground. "The Charter permits personal comfort devices. Our research indicates this is perfectly acceptable." "This is not a comfort device. It is a statement," Lord Zexacrill hissed. "It's a chair," Alan said calmly. "Nothing more, nothing less." The Draxian's scales darkened with rage. "The Council will not stand for this disruption," a soft voice interrupted them. "Actually, the human is correct." They turned to see an elderly alien approaching. He walked slowly, leaning on a carved staff. His skin was pale violet, and his eyes were large and completely black. Despite his apparent age, he carried himself with dignity. "Elder Momu," Lord Zexacrill said, his voice suddenly respectful but strained. "This does not concern the Quanitarians." "The Charter concerns us all," Momu replied. "I helped write it, if you recall. Article 89.7 was included specifically to ensure all species could participate comfortably, regardless of their physiology." The elder turned to Alan. "Your interpretation is sound, human. The Council must honor it." Lord Zexacrill's tail lashed angrily, but he lowered his voice. "Very well. Keep your chair, but remember your place. Observers speak only when directly addressed and only for the allotted time." After the Draxian stormed off, Alan turned to the elder. "Thank you for your support." Momu's face creased in what might have been a smile. "The Draxians have ruled unchallenged for too long. Some of us remember when the Council was truly equal." He leaned closer. "Be careful, though. They will not forgive this small rebellion." As the session began, Alan sat in the human chair while Olivia took notes beside him. The main floor was dominated by Draxian speakers. They discussed trade routes, resource allocation, and territorial disputes. Occasionally, other major species were permitted to comment briefly. No one addressed Earth or its representatives. After 3 hours, Alan noticed something. While the Draxians controlled who could speak, many representatives from smaller species kept glancing toward the humans in their distinctive chair. Some nodded subtly. Others seemed to be studying them with new interest. During a break in the proceedings, a small group of aliens approached, "Your chair is remarkable," said one with metallic skin and 4 arms. "I am Representative Cal of the Plex. We have been in the council for 3 centuries, yet our seating has never improved." Another alien, insect-like with compound eyes, clicked softly. "The Draxians maintain control through these small humiliations. No one has challenged them before, not even symbolically." Alan nodded politely. "We're just trying to participate comfortably." "Of course," Cal said, with what seemed like the alien equivalent of a wink. "Just comfort." As they returned for the second half of the session, Olivia whispered to Alan, "I think we might be starting something." Alan watched as Lord Zexakrill glared at them from his ornate throne in the center. "That," he said quietly, "was exactly the plan." 3 days passed. Earth's delegation attended each council session, sitting in their special chair at the back of the chamber. They watched and listened carefully. They were never invited to speak, but word of the humans and their chair spread through the council like wildfire. On the morning of the 4th day, Alan arrived at the chamber to find their chair missing. "Where is it?" Olivia asked, looking around the empty spot where they had left it. A maintenance worker from a species that looked like walking plants shuffled nervously nearby. "The Draxian security team took it," he whispered. "They said it needed to be inspected for safety." Alan kept his face calm, but inside he felt a mix of anger and satisfaction. The Draxians were bothered enough to act. That was progress. "Lord E." Zexkrill approached with 2 guards. He looked smug. "I regret to inform you that your comfort device has been found to contain unauthorized technology. It will be held for further inspection." "What unauthorized technology?" Alan asked. "The internal mechanisms. The council has strict rules about what devices can be brought into the chamber." Alan nodded slowly. "I see. Then we'll use the provided seating today." Lord Zexakrill seemed surprised by Alan's easy acceptance. "Yes, that would be appropriate." He walked away, looking pleased with himself. Once he was gone, Olivia whispered, "What do we do now?" "Now," Alan said quietly, "we call Susan." Back at the Earth Embassy that had been set up in a small section of the Draxian ship, Susan Kelly was furious. "They took our chair? Just like that?" She paced around the room, her hands clenched into fists. "They did," Alan confirmed. "And I'm pretty sure they'll never give it back." Cal of the Plex had joined them. The metallic-skinned alien had become something of an ally over the past few days. "This is typical Draxian behavior. They let you show a little independence, then crush it to make an example." Susan stopped pacing. "So what's our next move?" Alan smiled. "They took our chair because it was working. Other species were taking notice. Some even asked about getting their own custom seats." "The Draxians won't allow that," Cal said. "They control the council by controlling who can be seen and heard. The speaking system only activates for officially recognized seating." Susan's eyes lit up. "The speaking system? How does it work?" Cal pulled out a small device and projected a holographic image. "Each authorized seat has a biosignature reader and communication node. When a representative is recognized to speak, their seat activates the nearest sound amplification field." Susan studied the image. "And if you're not in an official seat, your voice doesn't carry beyond a few feet," Cal finished. Susan turned to Alan. "I need to see how these systems work up close." Cal hesitated. "The communication systems are heavily restricted. Only Draxian technicians are allowed access." Susan grinned. "Who said anything about asking permission?" That night, while most of the ship slept, Cal led Susan and Olivia through the maintenance tunnels behind the council chamber. Alan had stayed behind at the embassy to avoid suspicion. "The main control hub is through here," Cal whispered, pointing to a small door. "But there are always guards." Susan pulled out a small device. "This might help. It's an electromagnetic pulse generator. Very localized, very short duration." Cal looked impressed. "That would disable the security sensors, but only for about 30 seconds. "That's all I need," Susan said. The pulse worked perfectly. While the security system reset, they slipped into the control hub. Susan worked quickly, scanning the alien technology with her own devices. Fascinating, she muttered. Their systems are advanced, but the basic principles are similar to ours. It's all about frequencies and recognition patterns. Hurry, Cal urged. Night security will be here soon. Susan downloaded as much data as she could. Then they slipped back into the maintenance tunnels just as heavy footsteps approached. The next morning, in their embassy workshop, Susan explained what she had found. The Draxians use a specific frequency pattern to activate the speaking system. Each official seat has a transmitter keyed to that frequency. Alan nodded. Can we duplicate it? Susan held up a small device. Already have, but there's a problem. The system also checks the location of the signal. It has to come from an approved spot on the chamber floor. So even if we had the transmitter, it wouldn't work from our position at the back, Olivia said. Unless, Susan said with a smile, we boost the signal. A lot. Cal looked concerned. That might interfere with other council systems. Only if we get caught, Susan replied. Over the next 2 days, Susan and her team built what looked like an ordinary chair. But inside was a powerful transmitter designed to mimic and amplify the Draxian communication signals. It won't be as comfortable as the first one, Susan admitted. A lot of the space is taken up by equipment. Comfort isn't the point, Alan said. On the day of the next major council session, Alan and Olivia arrived with their new chair. Lord Zexkrill immediately confronted them. What is this? Another chair? Alan kept his expression innocent. As you said, our first chair contained unauthorized technology. This is just a simple wooden chair from Earth, no hidden mechanisms. Lord Zexkrill circled the chair suspiciously. One of his guards scanned it with a device. It appears to be just wood, my lord, the guard reported. The Draxian ambassador seemed disappointed. Very well. You may keep your primitive seating. It makes no difference. As the session began, Alan sat quietly in the new chair. Today was important. The council was discussing opening new trade routes in Earth's solar system. The Draxians had proposed heavy taxes on any species wishing to trade with humans. When the time came for comments, several major species spoke in favor of the Draxian proposal. None spoke against it. Earth was not invited to comment. As the vote approached, Alan pressed his palm against a small patch on the chair's armrest. He felt it warm slightly under his touch. He stood up. The delegation from Earth wishes to address the council, he said in a normal speaking voice. To everyone's shock, his voice boomed through the chamber, clear and strong. All heads turned toward the back of the room. Lord Zexkrill jumped to his feet. What is this? Humans have not been recognized. Alan continued speaking, his voice carrying perfectly. According to Council Procedure 23.5, any species directly affected by a proposal has the right to address the council before voting. The chamber erupted in confused murmurs. Some representatives looked shocked. Others seemed delighted by the disruption. Elder Momu slowly stood from his seat. The human is correct. Earth has the right to speak on this matter. The Grand Admiral, who was presiding over the session, looked furious but trapped by his own rules. Very well. The human may speak, for 2 minutes only. Alan nodded respectfully. Thank you, Grand Admiral. And then, standing tall beside the tiny stool the Draxians had assigned to humanity, Alan began Earth's first real address to the Galactic Council. The council chamber was completely silent. All eyes were on Alan as he stood beside his chair at the back of the room. For the first time since humans had joined the Galactic Council, everyone was listening. Esteemed members of the council, Alan began, his voice clear and strong through the hacked speaker system. Earth is new to your galactic community. We come with open minds and a desire to learn. But we also come with dignity. He paused, looking around the vast chamber. Hundreds of alien faces watched him with expressions ranging from shock to interest. The proposed trade taxes would make it impossible for Earth to participate fairly in galactic commerce. We are a young spacefaring species, yes. but we deserve the same starting chance that many of you received when you joined this council. Lord Zexacril was frantically consulting with his technical staff. They were checking devices, clearly trying to figure out how a human from the back of the room was using the speaking system. Each of your species has something unique to offer, Alan continued. Humans are adaptable, creative, and determined. We solve problems in ways others might not consider. We can be valuable trading partners if given the chance. From her seat, beside Alan, Olivia saw several representatives nodding. Others were whispering to each other. I ask you to consider a fair tax structure, one that allows new members to grow and contribute. In time, Earth will become a worthy partner to all species in this chamber. Alan sat down as his 2 minutes ended. The sound system continued working for a moment longer, capturing the sound of his chair creaking. Then it cut off. The chamber erupted in conversation. The Grand Admiral banged a large gong for order. This disruption is unacceptable, Lord Zexacril shouted. The humans have tampered with council systems. Elder Momu rose slowly to his feet. I heard nothing improper. The human representative made valid points about the trade proposal. Perhaps we should consider them. Several other species signaled their agreement. The insect-like representative clicked loudly. The Zintari support revising the tax structure. Cal of the Plex stood. The Plex also support reconsideration. The Grand Admiral looked displeased but nodded. Very well, the proposal will be returned to committee for revision. As the session ended, Alan and Olivia were surrounded by representatives from smaller species. Many wanted to talk, to ask questions about Earth, or simply to congratulate them on their bold move. Lord Zexacril pushed through the crowd. His scales were dark with anger. This is not over, human. Your speaking privileges have been permanently revoked. Guards, confiscate that chair. Draxian security officers moved forward, but before they reached Alan, he smiled and pressed something on the chair's armrest. There was a soft hiss, and the chair collapsed into a flat bundle of wood. No need, Alan said pleasantly. We're done with it anyway. The Draxian's tail lashed furiously. You think this is a game? The Empire has crushed species far more advanced than yours. Your primitive world would not survive a single day against our fleet. Elder Momu stepped between them. Are you threatening military action against a council member, Lord Zexacril? That would be most concerning. Other representatives gathered closer, watching the confrontation. The Draxian looked around, suddenly aware of his audience. Of course not, he said, his voice lower. I merely remind the humans that respect for council procedures is essential. He stormed away, his guards following. Back at the Earth Embassy, the team celebrated their small victory. Did you see his face? Susan laughed. He couldn't figure out how we did it. The committee will still favor the Draxians, Cal warned. They control too many votes. Alan nodded. But now other species are speaking up. That's progress. Olivia's tablet beeped with an incoming message. She read it and looked up with concern. The Draxians have scheduled an emergency session for tomorrow. Topic: Security measures for technological compliance. They're going to try to ban our chairs completely, Alan said. Not just that, Cal added. This type of proposal usually includes searches and confiscation of any unauthorized devices. They'll tear apart your embassy looking for evidence. Susan looked worried. They'll find our workshop, all our tech, Alan thought for a moment. Then we need to move fast. What's the biggest statement we can make before they shut us down? Susan and Olivia exchanged looks. I have an idea, Susan said slowly, but it's risky. At this point, Alan replied, risk is all we have. They worked through the night. Cal brought representatives from 3 other species who were sympathetic to Earth. Each contributed knowledge, materials, or simply another pair of hands. By morning, they had built something unlike anything seen in the council before. When the emergency session began, the Draxian Grand Admiral opened with a stern speech about order and respect for traditions. Lord Zexacril followed with a list of new security measures aimed directly at Earth. All personal items must be approved 3 days in advance, he declared. Any unauthorized technology will result in immediate expulsion from council grounds. Representatives must use only assigned seating. The proposals were clearly designed to silence Earth permanently. Many smaller species looked concerned, knowing these rules would eventually be used against them too. When it came time to vote, the Grand Admiral called for those in favor. Many hands went up, mostly from species allied with the Draxians. Those opposed? The Grand Admiral asked, expecting little resistance. Alan stood up. Behind him, his new chair began to transform. It grew taller, extending upward until Alan stood at the same height as the Draxian representatives. Small platforms unfolded on either side where Olivia and Susan quickly stepped up to join him. The chair continued to change. Panels opened to reveal screens displaying information about the proposed security measures and their likely effects on trade. A soft light illuminated the humans, making them visible to everyone in the chamber. "Point of order," Alan called out. His voice didn't boom through speakers this time. Instead, dozens of small devices activated throughout the chamber. Cal and their other allies had placed them during the night. Each projected Alan's voice clearly to a section of the room. Under Charter Article 7.1, any measure affecting all council members must allow comment from each affected party before voting. Elder Momu immediately stood. The human is correct. Again. The Grand Admiral looked stunned by the display. Lord Zexakril was speechless with rage. Earth opposes these measures, Alan continued. Not just for ourselves, but for every species that values fair representation. The Council was founded on principles of diversity and respect. These security proposals contradict those principles. All around the chamber, representatives began to stand. First a few, then dozens. Some were from species that had never spoken against the Draxians before. The rebellion that had started with one small chair was growing into something much larger. 1 week had passed since the dramatic emergency session. The Draxian security measures had been voted down in a surprising turn of events. For the first time in living memory, the Draxian Empire had lost a major council vote. Alan stood at the window of the newly expanded Earth Embassy. Their quarters had been moved from the small back section to a more prominent area of the Draxian ship. It wasn't exactly a prime location, but it was a significant improvement. "The new council session starts in an hour," Olivia said, entering the room with her tablet. "Word is that the Grand Admiral himself will address the seating issue." Alan nodded. "They can't ignore it anymore. Too many species are asking questions." The door chimed, and Susan entered with Cal of the Plex and several other alien representatives. They had become regular visitors as Earth's reputation grew. "Our engineers have been studying your chair designs," said a tall, thin alien with blue skin. "Simple but brilliant adaptations," Susan smiled. "Sometimes the oldest ideas work best. We just updated them a little." Cal held up a small device. "Security is high for today's session. The Draxians have installed new scanners at every entrance." "Looking for more of our tech?" Alan asked. "No doubt," Cal replied, "but they won't find anything. We've been careful." The group made their way to the council chamber. As predicted, security was tight. Draxian guards scanned everyone entering. Alan and his team passed through without issue. They carried nothing suspicious today. Inside, Alan noticed something different. Several species had modified their assigned seating. Nothing dramatic, but small changes. Cushions, backrests, even slight height adjustments. The rebellion was spreading in subtle ways. The Grand Admiral entered with unusual ceremony. Draxian guards lined the central platform. Lord Zexakril followed, looking tense. "Esteemed council members," the Grand Admiral began, "recent events have caused us to review certain council traditions. The Draxian Empire has led this body for 10,000 years. Under our guidance, peace and order have prevailed." He paused, his gaze sweeping the chamber. "However, it has been brought to our attention that some aspects of council procedure may need updating." A murmur of surprise ran through the assembly. No one had expected this approach. After careful consideration, the Empire proposes a revision to seating arrangements. All species will now be seated according to their chronological membership in the council rather than by other factors. Lord Zexacril stepped forward, his voice was strained. A detailed plan has been prepared. Implementation will begin immediately after this session. Alan and Olivia exchanged glances. This wasn't a victory. The Draxians would still control the best positions since they were founding members. But it was a significant concession. Elder Momu rose slowly to his feet. This is a welcome change, however, I propose an amendment. Seating should be arranged in rotating sections, allowing all members equal time in each area of the chamber over the course of a standard galactic year. The Grand Admiral's tail twitched with irritation, but he nodded. The amendment will be considered. As the discussion continued, representatives from dozens of species offered suggestions. Some were practical, others clearly designed to reduce Draxian dominance. The session stretched for hours as centuries of frustration poured out. During a break, Alan found himself next to Lord Zexacril at a refreshment station. Satisfied with the chaos you've caused, human? The Draxian asked quietly. Alan sipped his water. It's not chaos. It's democracy. You have no idea what you've done. The Empire maintained order. Now every minor species thinks they deserve equal treatment. Don't they? Alan asked simply. Lord Zexacril snorted. Such naivety. The galaxy requires strong leadership. Without it, everything falls into disarray. Or perhaps it finds a better balance, Alan suggested. The Draxian leaned closer. The Grand Admiral has received demands from our military leaders. Many want to make an example of Earth, to show what happens to those who challenge us. Alan met his gaze steadily. That would violate council law. Laws can be reinterpreted. They can. But once you start breaking your own rules, others will follow. Is that the order you want? The Draxian studied him for a long moment, then walked away without answering. When the session resumed, the Grand Admiral announced a compromise. Seating would be reorganized into equal sections, with positions rotating quarterly. A committee with representatives from 12 species, including Earth, would oversee the transition. As the details were finalized, Susan nudged Alan and pointed to a corner of the chamber. There, almost hidden behind a pillar, sat a small stool. It looked exactly like the one originally assigned to humans. Is that? Alan began. Yes, Olivia confirmed, checking her tablet. According to the new seating chart, that's now the position assigned to the Draxian Junior Diplomatic Staff. Alan tried not to smile. Poetic justice. After the session ended, Elder Momu approached Alan. Your species has accomplished in weeks what others have failed to do in centuries. We just asked for fair treatment, Alan said. With style, the Elder added. And persistence. The Draxians underestimated you because of your size and your youth as a spacefaring species. They will not make that mistake again. Will they retaliate? Olivia asked. Momu considered this. Not directly. The Empire values its reputation too much, but they have long memories. Be vigilant. In the following days, a remarkable transformation occurred in the council chamber. Engineers from a dozen species, including Susan and her team, worked together to create a new seating system. The rigid hierarchy was replaced with adaptable sections that could accommodate any body type comfortably. On the day of the first session with the new arrangement, Alan sat in a standard council seat. It wasn't at the front, but neither was it, hidden at the back. Earth was now just another member, different, new, but equal. Lord Zexacril passed by on his way to the Draxian section. He paused briefly. Enjoy your victory, human. It won't last. Alan smiled politely. It's not about winning or losing, Lord Zexacril. It's about respect. As the session began, Alan looked around the chamber. Species that had never interacted before were now seated beside each other, exchanging greetings and ideas. The chamber felt different, more energetic, more open. And in the corner, almost out of sight, A junior Draxian diplomat perched uncomfortably on a tiny stool, straining to see and hear the proceedings. One small seat had indeed led to a massive change, not just for Lizardkind, but for the entire galaxy.